Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Let's hope to work it all out because working things out. Technically speaking. Welcome everybody. Sorry for the technical issues, if there are any, because today we are actually extending ourselves, overreaching, let's say. We don't only have my own channels, but we are being guested also by the channels of my special guest, Santos Bonacci, which I have the honor to have today for this Astrotheology Easter special. We're going to explain you what is Astrotheology with one of the biggest experts today on the scene, Santos Bonacci. We were actually due to have this discussion, this chat many years ago, but then something happened. And so, you know, things happened, but we are here in 2026. I'm here in California. He is in Chiapas, in Mexico. And we are working, I mean, all of the people who are tuning in on all the various platforms, Facebook, YouTube, X, Rumble, BitChute, various channels on YouTube. So we are really, like I said, doing something particular and special for this Easter, which wants to also bring a message which is positive and a message of peace to humanity. But first of all, let me thank Anders Johansen, Dennis Bolanos Enriquez, Io Yukuzumaki, and Sivert Eksted and Larry Frascella for helping us out. And it's with great honor that I will bring in now our guest. Yes. Actually, let's introduce him with even a bigger introduction. Santos Bonacci. Ciao, Santos.
Hi, how are you, Leo?
Very well. I never ask you. You speak Italian?
Yep.
A little bit? Parli italiano?
Come no?
Allora facciamo un saluto anche agli amici italiani, because I've also linked my Italian channel. So un saluto anche dall'amico Santos a tutti voi italiani che magari vi sintonizzate per questa trasmissione speciale, e buona Pasqua, no? Santos, gli diamo un buona Pasqua. So who is Santos Bonacci now? Santos Bonacci is, first of all, a fellow musician, by the way, because you are also a musician, so a record producer. You have been really in the scene for a long time, as long as I can remember being myself on the scene. I always heard a lot about Santos Bonacci. Like me, he's in exile from his former country of origin, his native country, Australia. He's no longer there. He was also persecuted like I was persecuted in Italy. So I really share something with you, which is very special, no, Santos?
Yeah, brother. Yeah, I watched what was happening to you all over the years. I remember that time that you were in that beautiful mansion and you were speaking on the balcony and you were talking about Amun Ra and and all. You mentioned all the Egyptian gods and everything like that. And you were actually, I think you were hostage there, or you were.
It's possible. It's possible. It's
Yeah.
possible. Unfortunately, there was moments in which we both probably suffered a lot because the system doesn't like rebels, likes only people who stay very much in line with what the system wants for you, which is slavery, and we are instead freedom fighters. First of all, how you got into all this, because of course most people know my story, especially the people who are tuning into from my channels, but how does Santos Bonacci become a rebel in Australia?
Well, so I grew up from two Italian immigrants, both from Calabria,
and a beautiful mother, which I know it's no longer with us, but very beautiful, very beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's also that thing, you have to leave your family, you have to leave everybody to go to a distant land, and then of course you cannot share also maybe the late age of your parents and other things, and this is of course something which I completely feel for you, because I have the same issue, of course.
Yeah, so I was born in Australia, and my parents baptized me Catholic, and then shortly...
Of course, they are from Calabria. What do you expect, Santos?
Exactly. So, but about when I was 3, my mother got a knock on the door by the Jehovah's Witnesses, and she converted. My father converted, and other members of the family converted on my mother's side, not the Bonacci, Germinara. On the Germinara side, they all became Jehovah's Witnesses. So,
wow.
So I had to learn how to be, I guess, hated when I'm knocking on people's doors. We got a lot of abuse. Yeah, no one likes Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on the door at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday.
Well, they are a sectarian reality, though. How do you relate with them now at an older age with a lot and vast experience? I mean, of course, you are no longer associated with them, but how do you see that initial part of your life growing in what is a sectarian reality?
Okay, so I did that up until my 40s, and then I realized that they were not satisfying me spiritually, so I left them. Now, I don't regret that I spent all that time, because I had my nose in the Bible, I had my nose in all of these books. I was reading and reading everything that came under my nose, So I don't regret it, even though I know now that it was just a Rockefeller, Rothschild funded brainwashing organization, really. So, and they funded them through Chase Manhattan and JP Morgan Bank. That's the two banks that funds the Jehovah's Witnesses. So I learned quickly that they were a corporate 501c3 church. So I removed myself in 2005. Then in 2007, something remarkable happened. All the books that I'd been reading all my life since I was a little boy, all the little connections came together. Syncretism and astrotheology just sort of made sense. I started to see that the Quran, the Bible, the Talmud, the Torah and everything, they're essentially saying the same thing with a different bend, a different tonality. But I realized that some of these gods, they all sounded similar. Like in India, there's Brahma and Saraswati. Well, the Jews have Abraham and Sarah. Okay. And then Esther and Mordecai in the Hebrew scriptures. I realized that that's just the Babylonian Astarte and Marduk. So I was seeing these similarities, but it wasn't me that was making these. I remember from years back reading books like The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop when I was a teenager, and he was saying it. But he was
let me interrupt you a second, because I would like to explain in a nutshell what astrotheology is for people who are new to it, because Santos has a channel with 300,000 and more subscribers dedicated to astrotheology. In fact, he's known as Mr. Astrotheology. So astrotheology is the study of religious beliefs derived from observing the celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the modern theological interpretations of space sciences at times are included. No, correct me if I'm wrong. And it's often something that explores the relationship between God and the cosmos, linking astronomy, astrobiology, and divinity. Now, for those who might be very skeptic about it, because they might say, oh, but I'm Christian, or I'm Jew, I'm this and I'm that, and I don't recognize this stuff, it's all pagan. No, let me introduce you to astrotheology in a different way. The inventor of astrotheology was actually an Anglican clergyman called William Derham, and he wrote a book called Astrotheology, or a demonstration of the being and attributes of God from a survey of the heavens. Then, of course, astrotheology can be interpreted in many different ways. We had then, of course, people like Gerard Massey. In more later times, we had my late friend Jordan Maxwell. Each one gave their own spin to astrotheology. So I just wanted to do this in order to clarify what astrotheology is.
Yeah. Thank you, because people may think that it's my invention, or no, it's been around forever, and it's called the perennial philosophy, which means it always was, it always is, and it always will be. It's the perennial philosophy, and all the religions derive their knowledge from it.
Yeah, that is a very important element, because, for example, you have the zodiac in old synagogues. You have the zodiac in old churches, even in Italy, Catholic churches, there is the presence of the zodiac, and people say, you know, why the zodiac? You have a zodiac in a church, no? But in reality, there is this very profound link that astrology came before astronomy, first of all. And let's not forget that it's very indicative, that we had even Jesus identified by the three Magis, the Zoroastrian priest, as some say, thanks to a comet, and thanks to the passage of this comet. So I think that is very important, though, to understand that we in no way want to disrespect the Holy Easter that people are celebrating in Judaism or in Christianity. This wants to just be a way of opening people's mind to these synchronicities that are at work, which are very important. No, Santos?
Yes, brother. Syncretism really is the science of bringing all of these diverse philosophies and ideologies and religions together, because they can be. They really can. They don't have to. The Jews don't have to.
Let's make a precision. Let's say something here about it. Organized religions have nothing to do with real religion, because organized religion is a business, and you had your own experiences with Jehovah's Witnesses, Catholics with the Catholic Church, or people with a variety of religions that in the end disappoint them because they're made of man rather than God. So I just wanted to say that, because otherwise people say, no, we are believers in the essence of the belief.
That's exactly right. Because in the end, which one of the Christians is going to put their hand up to say that they are the only true Christian church. There's 30,000 registered 501c3 churches. So the Northern Baptists are killing the Southern Baptists. The Mormons are hating on the Jehovah's Witnesses. So which church do we go to if we're going to be a Christian? You know what I mean? Isn't it best to accept Christ in your heart, in private, at home, and be a good Christian without belonging to a group that interprets the scriptures their way? I think that's the superior way, and that's what I'm teaching. You know,
but in fact, this doesn't have to be though misunderstood for some kind of a new age wishy-washy interpretation. This is very important because you see, I already know there is people say, Leo, why don't you come to my traditional Catholic Mass? If you don't follow the traditional Catholic Mass, then that's not real Christianity. And I'm like, oh my God. It's just like we are not here on this planet to side with religions like we're siding for a football team or a soccer team. Just put it in your heads. The Church of England of today is a joke. We just saw the other day the nomination of the Archbishop of Canterbury, a woman. That was a complete farce with kind of a choreography of African dancers in an Anglican church. What's that? I mean, we are talking here about the essence. And so for me, it was very important to have you today to talk about also the core theme of the astrotheology, the fact that, you know, you have a sign language of astronomical mythology, as Gerard Massey used to say. Now, for people who are not acquainted with Gerard Massey, well, I would suggest they read these two books, which are the books of the beginnings, which are fantastic books filled with a lot of knowledge. Like, then there is this book that was personally given to me many years ago by Jordan Maxwell, who republished some stuff from Gerard Massey regarding astrotheology, and then lays the basis for astrotheology here in this the old-time religion text, which I highly suggest you all check out. But I'm sure you already have, Santos, because you, of course, are the expert. So please.
Yeah, I have those books. Gerald Massey was an amazing man. His information really helped me a lot, and a lot of other modern-day astrotheologians, because he lived a couple 100 years ago. So, but there have been many ever since then, many, and they've all been persecuted. One man who lived in Birmingham, England, his name was the Reverend Robert Taylor. He went to jail twice because he was teaching astrotheology in the 1820s. They put him in jail in the 1820s. And his book is called The Devil's Pulpit, because all the ministers were saying, oh, don't go to Robert Taylor, the Reverend Robert Taylor. That's the devil's pulpit. He's teaching astrotheology. So they've always been persecuted, and they've always been called pagan. You see, the word pagan is not a bad word. It just means folk tradition. Like when you play folk music, it doesn't mean you're not playing music. You're still playing music. It's just, it's not from the conservatorium. So but it's still music, right? And so these people get stigmatized. Oh, this is pagan. Don't believe the pagans. When I was a Jehovah's Witness, you couldn't read Catholic books. You couldn't read Jewish books. You had to read just the Watchtower and the Awake and their publications. So, but I didn't listen. I read everything I wanted to, and I used to hide those books because.
I mean, I see the Jehovah's Witnesses religion just as the Mormons as spin-offs of Freemasonry in an age in which Freemasonry was highly influential, and in fact, we saw the clear reference in that pyramid that was then removed in the last few years from the Jehovah's Witnesses dedicated to their founder, no? That was obviously the symbol also of the York Rite there, very visible for everybody. So I think that the problem here is that organized religion got to a new phase once Freemasonry became popular here in America with the freedom of religion, and anybody could make up their own religion. And it still happens to this day, Santos.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Every day there's a new one coming up, and there's people that actually follow them still. It's bewildering that they haven't worked it out yet.
We are in a very particular day for Christians. We are at the eve of Easter, of the resurrection. But then there is an astrotheological element we would like to discuss with you, the symbology of the sun has risen. So, please.
Yeah, well, there's a scripture in the scripture in the Bible, Psalm 83:11, and it says, "For the Lord God is a sun." Well, there you go. Malachi, the last few verses of the Old Testament says, "For the Lord will return with the sun, and the sun will bring healing in its wings." Then there's Ecclesiastes chapter 11, where it says, "It is good for the eyes of man to see the sun." So we know that the Therapeutae and the Essenes from Egypt, from Alexandria, they used to wake in the morning to look at the sun and put their palms up to the sun, because that was the best light of the sun. And they called the sun Shamesh in Babylon. Shamesh means the servant, because it serves us every day. It rises. It's the risen Savior. That's why Jesus says, "And I will return. I will return as a light in the heavens."
So I will also add that you have in Psalms 19:1, the heavens are declaring the glory of God. So, and we have, of course, also that important hermetical principle, the emerald tablets, what is above is reflected below, and below above. And this is also a very important concept, I think, that is reflected in astrotheology.
Yes, brother. So guys like Origen of Alexandria, one of the church fathers, Origen, he said, "You yourself have a sun, a moon, and all the planets and all the stars in you. What you see on the ecliptic, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, etc., what you see there, that is in you, in your body, because Aries is the first sign. It's the cerebrum. Taurus is the little cervello. This is the cervello. This is the cervelletto.
Yes,
yes. Okay, that's Taurus. Then we have the twins, Gemini, the two arms and the two lungs. Then we have the chest, Cancer. Then we have Leo, the lion heart. Why is Leo called the lion heart? Well, because Leo is in your heart. It's your cardiovascular circulatory system. Then Virgo below is the bowels. She rules the digestive system. Then Libra is the kidneys. The two scales of Libra are the two kidneys, yin and yang. And then Scorpio is the generative system. Then lower, Sagittarius is the hips, which comes from the word hippo, horse, hips. Then the knees and the skeletal system is...
This reminds me of what you're saying a lot of the work that was also made by Manly P. Hall in the Occult Anatomy, which was an important text that reflects exactly what you're saying, the importance of each side of the body reflective with either a specific sign of the zodiac or a specific planet. Now, going back to where we are now today, in this turbulent world, we have noticed, though, once again, in the infamous Epstein files, that they were talking about a secret society dedicated to the zodiac, with apparently, at the time of its creation, was also made possible thanks to J.P. Morgan. So the infamous J.P. Morgan believed in astrology. And in fact, it said that J.P. Morgan said, the millionaires they don't believe, but the billionaires believe in astrology. So the common folk sees astrology as almost a thing that is not really serious. I mean, it's just okay. In Italy, we have the very popular every day. You get it on the radio, on TV. The sign of the day. This your sign will do this. 12 signs, and they read what is really a very superficial interpretation, of course, because you're not doing it towards with a single person based on his birth and place of birth and all the rest. So it's very superficial. But that also makes you understand that the commercialization of astrology is also been at work in the last century.
Yeah, look, it's very clever because all the elite families, they all have their astrologers. They use tropical astrology. All the dates that they have, they are actually on the ecliptic. And so they use it, but then in the schools, they teach that it's a pseudoscience so that we are not empowered by the science of electromagnetic waves, because that's all it is. When you see a birth chart, you're seeing the schematics, or you could say the electromagnetic constitution of each individual. It's in the chart, and it's all electromagnetics, you see. The day I was born and I breathed my first breath of air, I assumed automatically all of the frequencies of the positions of the planets in the various signs, and that is my constitution.
This was actually in Jeffrey Epstein's infamous temple. You had actually a very specific reference to the zodiac here on the vault of his temple, which I find rather astonishing. Can you explain us more about the fact that, Jeffrey Epstein, amongst other things, has also this fixation for astrology?
Well, they have to, because it is the original mother of all sciences. All sciences come from astrology. So most people would say, there you go, you see these people trafficking pedophiles, they're into astrology. So that proves to you that astrology is evil. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, I can understand.
That's upside down thinking.
Well, that is, I would like to remind to those people that in the Basilica di San Petronio in Bologna, you have zodiac signs. You have similar zodiac signs in Palermo's cathedral. You have a bunch of zodiac on the porches of French cathedrals. You have a bunch of them, so I can't even nominate them all. So, I mean, people who ignore the influence of astrotheology are simply ignorant. That's it.
Yeah, it's sad because they've been indoctrinated. And so they will just give all their energy to their pastors and their books. And that's how they are being controlled. And this is how effective education or whatever mind control is. It is a very effective tool of the entities who are behind these people. I mean, what are they? Are they reptilians? What are they? I mean, I don't know anymore.
Well, I mean, the genies were often depicted with reptilian traits, but there is definitely a demonic element to it. We can also, though, in this case, discuss the fact that certain animals have also a very important role in this astrotheological world. I mean, you have the lion that you talked about, you have the bear, you have, and of course you have also the snake, which is also very relevant for a lot of cultures and religions. So how you will define these animals' symbolism within astrotheology?
Well, they are archetypal. So Aries, the sign we are in now, is the ram. And it has to do with cardinal fire. The ram, he is always fiery, you see, and he has the same characteristics. I'm Aries, so we have the same characteristics as the ram, archetypally. But it's not just one animal. There are many animals that go into Aries. The dog belongs to Aries as well. The canine, and the ovine are both Aries, because where the wolf is, the left hemisphere of the brain, there is also the lamb. The wolf is always with the lamb. So the canine and the ovine, that's the cerebrum, the two sides of the brain, right? So and then Taurus, the pig goes into Taurus as well, the swine. There are many, there's hundreds, it's infinite. But they've chosen the 12 most archetypal because of their characteristics and how they relate most to that element and to the modality. See, there are 3 fire signs. One is cardinal, one is fixed, one is mutable. So, and that is Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. So the cardinal fire is the essence of fire. Leo is the most expressive of fire, the most expansive. And then Sagittarius is mutable because it mutates the fire into another element. That's why it's called mutable. There you go. You've got it right there.
So you have Leo, you have Virgo, you have Libra, but of course Leo has always a prominent role also as the symbol of the tribe of Judah.
Yes, always. In fact, there are many astrotheologians who have tried to sync the tribes of Israel with the zodiac, and there's many lists, but always Leo is never ever any other sign other than Judah. It's always Judah. Whereas Libra and Scorpio, sometimes the tribe of Dan gets Scorpio and sometimes Libra gets Scorpio. So all the other signs, there's confusion amongst all the scholars, all of them. I've read all the astrotheologians and they never agree on the other 11 except for Leo. Leo always is the lion of the tribe of Judah, the Jews.
Now, yes, of course. Now, astrology is also present in Freemasonry. I was very active in Freemasonry for many years, so I know a little bit about it. But it's primarily symbolic and esoteric rather than practical. I mean, it's like an allegorical tool for moral study rather than divination. However, there was a book that actually was republished with the I remember the introduction of Jordan Maxwell by Robert Hewitt Brown, who was a 32 degree. I don't know if you ever read this book, but is fueled with very interesting elements. This is the book, for those who don't know, it's Stellar Theology and Masonic Astronomy, and there is a foreword in this latest edition by Jordan Maxwell. And these are more or less than the various, the astronomical facts, the relation to the Masonic fraternity, the rituals of the Masonic fraternity, and the explanation of symbols, legends, and all the rest. Now, why do you think that today the Freemasons, but also these other secret societies, much more elitarian, like the one cited by Epstein, which is linked to J.P. Morgan and friends, and all the people who came after who want to, they keep the secret society apparently in New York only for 12 people at the time, because each one of them is given a zodiacal sign, and so they have to wait for their demise before. And then you have, though, a world in crisis, a world which has lost spirituality, which has lost any sense of decency. Why is all that, Santos? Is that the Kali Yuga descending phase?
Yeah, you can explain it with that. Yes, it is. We have lost a lot of our conscious understanding of astrology. So since we have lost it, they have kept the secrets, they have the knowledge, they've kept the books withheld from the public, and so they know how it works. But what they've done is they've inverted it so that the public will see that they're using these God-given tools, astrology being the most important. They've inverted it, and for wicked purposes and for their wicked agendas, and that is what makes people convinced that the science is evil, because the representatives of them are not the true representatives. It's people like you and I who represent it correctly.
Now, in the lodge, they say the worshipful master represents the sun. There is always, a way also of referencing to the Freemasons as the original builders of churches, which are also always positioned in the east. So there is always that reflection of, that heliocentricity that in a way appeared much later than it should have, probably, after 1,000 years of Ptolemaic principle before that. The ancients only really knew 5 of the 7 planets. So how do we relate with that fact, which is a missing element which now came into the equation with the additional 2 planets, which of course then complete and make the whole thing perfect, also in relation to the musical notes and to all the rest, no?
Yeah, so there's only 5 visible so-called planets. So that's Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and Mercury. The other 2 are the sun and the moon. They are luminaries. They're not what we call planets or wandering. They're wandering stars. They're stars. They're not planets like the Earth. They're not solid. They're luminaries. Ptolemy said that. He said, all what you see in the sky is luminous. It's not solid. They are luminous bodies. In fact, they are portals. So only 5 of those are visible, of the wandering stars. Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, they are not visible to our eyes, but they still hold their positions and their function, and they always have. You see, this is a mistake that people say, oh, but Neptune was only discovered in 1787 or the 1850-something. Uranus was discovered in 1880-something. No. They weren't discovered. It's like saying Australia was discovered 250 years ago by Captain Cook. No. It was always there. So Uranus has always been there. The Babylonians use it. The Babylonians use Pluto and Neptune in all of their accounting of astrology and their card system, which is the 52 card system of the Babylonians, whereas the tarot, that is 78 cards, and that is Egyptian. But in the Babylonian system, still to this day, and always since time immemorial, they acknowledge Neptune and Uranus and Pluto.
Now, one thing is very important here. You just took out tarots. The tarots can be used for divination, but they can also be used for something much more profound, which is to learn analogy with the various star signs, the various numbers, their connection with certain planets. So it is this kind of tarot that you envision, or because the tarots can also become dangerous once you start using them for divination. I've always had the impression that is something that we should leave probably aside, while instead the much more profound meaning, and also working with analogy rather than logic, because logic is a much more newer form of apprenticeship. In ancient Rome, it was all about analogy.
Yeah, so the tarot cards are simply like astrology. They are just tools for understanding energy. If the individual, the astrologer, is competent, he will be able to make deductions about the future accurately. This is the thing. This is why the evil is connected to it, because the future really shouldn't be known, because there is no future and there's no past. There's only the eternal now.
Yeah.
So when you're reading something and someone says, what do you think will happen? Read my cards. They can't make any fixed prediction. It's impossible. It's beyond the scope of the human mind for a start. They can just say, well, look, this card shows that you have supportive energy. This chart shows that you may be successful, this card. This card also shows that there will be difficulties. That's all you can do. You can't do more than that. So anyone who sets themselves up as a divinatory astrologer, you're living very, very dangerously. You really are.
Because then there is definitely a way of being tricked by the tricksters, let's say, by the cosmic tricksters or demons at work. Now, that is an important and relevant question for the times we are living. There's a lot of talk about UFO disclosure, and I want to go back to the guy who created the astrotheology, William Derham, because he was actually a guy who was credited with believing in other beings from other planets. I mean, he was just like Giordano Bruno, but Giordano Bruno unfortunately ended up on the stake for being Giordano Bruno. What do you think is happening right now with this supposed, let's say, disclosure of sorts? I mean, the plurality of words suggests there is, of course, other planets, but also we might have the plurality of universes. So the multiverse, which seems to be very close to quantum physics and so on. What is your take on all that?
Well, again, in Neoplatonism and Hermeticism, they talk about the hierarchies, seraphim, cherubim, archangels, angels. This is the order of the universe. So apparently some of these archangels and whoever, they took it upon themselves to use this creation from the demiurge to set themselves up as gods, right? And they have offspring. And so they want.
So you are basically referring to Genesis 6 and Book of Enoch kind of scenario here, just to make it clear, Nephilim, Watchers, and so on.
Yeah.
Because one interesting thing I noticed in the work, and I wanted actually to point it out to you today, in the work of Gerald Massey, was that he actually cites abundantly the Book of Enoch, but he actually sees the Book of Enoch as something much more profound in the interpretation also of the heavens.
Yeah, it is. It's all astrotheology.
So there is actually, he says, an ulterior layer in the Book of Enoch, which adds to, he says the Book of Enoch is not accepted by the majority, by Judaism officially, and we know it was left out of the canonical writings, but he says it's well understood by the Kabbalists who have a more detailed knowledge of things.
Yeah, of course. And Enoch is Hermes, Moses, Thoth, and Mercury in other languages, right? So when Marsilio Ficino was tasked by the Medici family to translate the Corpus Hermeticum and Plato, Marsilio Ficino said, "I have found the Moses of the Bible. It is Hermes." And it sounds the same, Hermes, Moses. So there you go. Hermes had 2 tablets. Moses had 2 tablets of the law. Enoch also had 2 tablets. They all had these 2 tablets. Well, it's this, the 2 hemispheres.
Okay, so here we go back to the fact that for those who have never read Gerald Massey, he, in the Book of the Beginnings, he really brings all the various he brings basically a very detailed parallel between Judaism and Egyptian religion, because he claims that in the end the Jews were simply part of the Egyptian religion that walked out. We go back probably to maybe the Akhenaton story that was the pharaoh who first accepted monotheism. Is that what you are telling here? You're trying to explain here? It's like that parallel is born out of the fact that in the end, the Jews were also originally from Egypt.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they were, of course, and it says that even in the scriptures that they came forth out of Egypt, right?
Yes.
But the Jews were not monotheistic; they were henotheistic.
Now there is, the moment in which they come out of Egypt, and then there is the Erev Rav, this multitude. It's basically this group of magicians who were so eager to follow Moses, even if they were not themselves Jews, but in a way they didn't really respect the precepts of what Moses was proposing, and so they inspired the golden calf. And from there on, things kind of went in the wrong direction.
That's right. That's when they became henotheistic. Jordan Maxwell talks about this all the time. He has a whole video where he says the Jews were not monotheistic; they were henotheistic, which means they chose one out of the many gods.
So Yahweh rather than Baal, Yahweh rather than other gods. That is basically what you're stating here.
Exactly.
Now, the Erev Rav, though, this non-Israelite group, becomes for Isaac Luria a danger because it seems to have affected negatively the pursuit of monotheism that was in the Jewish choice that was made. It's almost like they have within them this enemy that they have brought with them since the times of ancient Egypt.
Yes, brother. So first and foremost, it's very important to separate the word monotheism from monism.
Okay.
See, you and I, we are monists. We know that there is one source creator. We know that. So monism then individuates itself into polytheism, which then creates henism or henotheism, where you choose one of those gods from the monist model, and then below that is monotheism. So monotheism is an aberration of monism, which is our true original perennial philosophy. We're all monists because we have to be, because we all come from the one source, and we're all from the one conscious living being, which we call God. And that's monism. That's the true theology.
Okay, that's an interesting take. And it's definitely, I guess, rather illuminating for this provoking chat that we are having today. I want to show an image which is just out of The Economist, the world ahead, and it seems pretty clear who this world is in the hands of when you see this image.
Yeah.
I mean, the ownership of the, of course, the Fiat Agnelli company in Italy was very popular. Now it's in the hands of the Elkann family, which is a Sabatier and Frankis family, which has overtook the whole company. And they have also bought The Economist. So it's rather, it's rather indicative that they publish a cover like this one, which seems a direct reference to Baal, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, for sure. Moloch
and Baal, which are epithets of each other, because in the end, it was about the Phoenicians getting integrated and the Canaanites, and all that. No? So, what do you think of how is the world heading towards this disaster, which is an announced disaster, as we can see from the cover of The Economist?
Well, I know that there will be apocalypse, which means there will be an apocalypse, an unveiling of, ISIS's veil will be revealed, and we will see through. And we already are. We're penetrating through the lies, through the delusions, and we're starting to see that the king is wearing no robes. So we're starting to see that we gave our power away to politicians through maritime law, Justinian law, and we should be sovereign and self-determined. And this is what people are realizing now. Even though they've been educated, they've been injected with stuff, they've been pushed down and subdued and enslaved and indoctrinated, they're still waking up. It's just incredible, the spirit of humanity, that even the people who are at the very, very, very bottom of society, they are still seeing, they're seeing through the lies and the delusions. We've come to the end, brother. It can't go longer. It may get worse.
But it might get worse before it gets better, because it seems, from what I at least have also discussed in some of my books, that first of all, we have to really face cyber Satan, the AI's ultimate takeover, and the robots, and the transformation maybe of the last remaining humans in some monstrosity, hybrid monstrosity. There is going to be people like us who renounce to all that. But for doing that, we have to go off the grid. We have to go renounce to probably the privileges of participating to the rest of society. If things continue in this direction, it seems like we want to be left out, or at least we are going to willingly be left out, because we don't seem to have anything to share with these people. Because I don't want to be, become a transhuman with the things that are inserted inside me, monitor 24/7, with the excuse of a better health or a better security for myself and all this rubbish. We know that is the digital prison, which is kind of coming, more and more. Now, don't you feel that this is also the product of reverse engineering from those, let's say, fallen angels of sorts, which we mentioned earlier with the book of Enoch or Genesis 6?
Yeah, it is. Everything they've done is they've inverted all the good that was created on this earth, the Tartarian free energy grid and everything. They removed it. They destroyed it. It took them a long time. They started in full effect since the French Revolution. But you can go back to the Council of Trent. I believe that all the wickedness on the earth started in 1545 with the Council of Trent.
Soon after the Jesuits were accepted in the church.
Exactly. 5 years prior to that, in 1540, the Jesuits were founded. And Copernicus came and made a revolution. He revolutionized the cosmos, you see. So, and Ptolemy's system, which was around since forever, since the Egyptians, was overturned. So those were very, very crucial years, and they correspond. They go from 1539 to 1545. So when you go 500 years later, you get 1939 to 1945. And you see the same disastrous thing that happened, the Second World War. So in 1539, the Pope then, I think it was a Farnese or a Borgia, he made the bull called Convocation. And that bull, papal bull, tied the ones from the 1400s together. And then in that bull, they claimed the soul, the spirit, and the property of all the humans on the earth. That's why he wears the tiara, the triple crown, the Pope, because they own the physical, the spiritual, and they claim to own the soul of the individuals. So in 1939, they had their bull, and then the Jesuits were formed, and then they convened the Council of Trent, which lasted 18 years. What did they do in that council?
I think that, I wrote, as you know, a number of books on these subjects, especially when it comes down to the Vatican. I will suggest for my readers Volume 12, because I explained that Farnese himself was rather scared of what was happening with the Church of England, with the Reformation. Martin Luther, who went to Rome and saw that they was so decadent, he couldn't take it anymore. So then they decided to really get the Jesuits on board, though Ignazio Loyola had been arrested several times by the Inquisition because he himself was an alumbrados. So he himself was actually somebody who was very well versed in magic, and they needed people who were very well versed in magic. They needed also a military order after the past one, Templars, had been, of course, eliminated. And so they accept with the Jesuits the return to some kind of, though it was different because it is a general, but they work in a much more covert way. In fact, in the 1560s, after they give birth to the entity, to the Vatican intelligence, and they fight the Reformation by infiltrating the Reformation left, right, and center. And so today we see that after a few centuries of Jesuitism, we have the Church of England with the King Charles going to the Vatican and co-celebrating, and the whole thing coming back together. And now, of course, also this attempt of putting all the religions of the world together, which was formalized initially by Pope Francis, and also the Encyclica Fratelli Tutti. Now, that is different from the syncretism you are talking about. Let's make it very clear to our audience.
Yeah, that's ecumenical. Ecumenical is the again, like monotheism is the distorted version of monism. Ecumenism is their version of syncretism, but syncretism will always be. They can't eliminate it. It's an effort. It's an artificial effort to bring people together. It's not going to work because then they're not teaching how all the philosophies are all one. Theology is just the other side of science. Science and theology are two sides of one coin. They're not showing that. They're not teaching that. In fact, theology should never be a word. It should always be astrotheology. They took the astro bit out hundreds of years ago because they didn't want people to look up to the skies. They wanted them to look at men. So they said, let's separate astrotheology to get those two words always work together, and let's just make it theology, right? So that people wouldn't see that it's astro, it's from the heavens. So yeah,
it's from the heavens, but it's also reflected inside you, and that is something I want to touch with you now. What do you think of Rudolf Steiner's take on the soul, which was basically reflected in the heavens, and he actually created a very specific map of it also?
Yeah, well, that's called Adam Kadmon, and Adam Kadmon is on the ecliptic. It starts here, the 21st of March. Here,
you see here we have Pasqua, Easter.
Yeah,
then you have on the opposite side you have the San Giovanni, San Michele, and Christmas, and of course these are all in reference with an interpretation which, of course, Steiner himself had been fooled by the Theosophical Society, but then in a way wanted to reacquire some kind of purity when he started the Anthroposophical Society. What is your idea of Theosophy today?
Well, originally, Madame Blavatsky was, she was authentic, and she was really channeling the truth. She was infiltrated. The Jesuits infiltrated her because she spoke against them. She said, there is a great, great evil that is the most evil on the earth, and they are in Rome, and they are called the Jesuits. She attacked the Jesuits, and soon after, her mentor was murdered, and another guy moved in, and took over theosophy, and it was like.
And then after we had Anibesana, which basically the Jesuits apparently there were completely at ease with there and could continue their whole. And then, of course, they created the experiment of Krishnamurti, this false messiah, no, that was brought up and then renounced very cleverly his position. Do you think there will be in the future another attempt to present to the world a messianic figure of sorts?
That they're doing it all the time. Every year there's a new messiah.
But do you think they will get to the ultimate, what, with all the technology now they have available and the way they are organizing and structuring all the religions of the earth under the Jesuits, basically? What should we expect?
Well, I'm expecting it. It's possible, right? It may not happen, but everyone should expect it. That the club are going to bring either an individual or something not human as a messiah. Yes, this is the plan. Whether they pull it off or not, that is the plan, the ultimate plan. After the alien invasion.
Okay. So you think that definitely we're gonna be unfortunately victims of a massive psyop called alien invasion?
Yeah, for sure, bro. Yeah.
That is in the making, you think? Huh? The Jesuits seem to have been very much in line with that idea. From the 50s onwards, the Vatican has definitely had a different take than others towards also this phenomenon. So I can definitely imagine. There is also a very interesting connection here, because we're talking about astrotheology, and the Jesuits were the ones who, of course, experts in grimoires, experts in invocation, but also expert astronomers, building the first astronomical facility in Rome. And then, of course, today is in Castel Gandolfo, after the lights in Rome became too obfuscated too much. And even Castel Gandolfo today is apparently not even used for those reasons, because now they use Mount Graham. So the Jesuits are really spearheading even SETI, even they want to baptize extraterrestrials and all that. And we have, let's say, at the moment in this situation, a religion which is definitely preparing us for something to come. So I'm there with you. I think that you are very much correct in that regards. Now we are about once again we're going towards the resurrection of Jesus. In astrotheological terms, without, of course, we don't want to be disrespectful to any Christian out there, but we would like to know from you how this moment is depicted in astrotheological terms.
Well, for 6 months, the days have been shorter than the nights since the autumnal equinox in Libra on the 23rd of September. So if we get a circle like this, the bottom is winter and the top is summer, okay? Now, Aries is always here and Libra is always here. So when the sun goes down to, say, Christmas, down the bottom in the winter, the sun is dead, it's and then it's born again, because at the bottom the sun has to now wax to go from the Tropic of Capricorn to the Tropic of Cancer. But in the middle, when it reaches Aries, the Passover of the Lamb, it passes over from the winter, and then on the 25th of March, the true beginning of the year, it starts to create longer days and shorter nights. And this is why we say it's the resurrection of the Son of God. It's been resurrected. It's been in hell for 6 months. The nights have dominated. The days are short. There's no food in winter. Now comes the food. We celebrate the Easter. It's a beautiful festivity.
Now,
It belongs to everyone.
Yeah, no. I mean, I find that you are perfectly portraying the symbology of it. But in regards to this symbology, behind it all, Jesus the man, who was he for you as an astrotheologist?
Well, Colossians 1:27-28 says, the Christ is in you. So if we go back in the past, which we can't do because there is no past and there's no future, it's always the eternal now. What that man incarnating represents that the heavens gave us a superior consciousness, and that superior consciousness would grant us access to the divine mind. So, you know, when they talk about the Neanderthals and then Cro-Magnon, that change, right? Well, that's how the scientists are trying to explain this evolutionary change, when men were not as conscious as they were, and then all of a sudden then they were, and they started building these elaborate buildings and everything like that. So I believe that happened, and all the astrotheologians do, that happened internally. That was something that happened within us, that God, that Christ was made flesh. It doesn't mean that it was just one man that was made, that was Christ. It means that Christ was in the flesh, and if you deny it, you're a blasphemer. If you deny that the Christ was made flesh, the scriptures say you are blaspheming against God. And so you should. It is, because we are Christ-like. We are sons of God. We're all Christian. In fact, Alexander not Alexander, Eusebius, Constantine's bishop, Origen, and all of them, they all said there never was a time in history when there wasn't Christianity. We're calling it Christianity now, but
interesting is that with Origen, he kind of makes a distinction between demons and fallen angels, which then is not carried on later on by Thomas Aquinas or by. So, what do you sense about that distinction? So the demons and the fallen angels as two different things. It's something that it's kind of never really discussed.
Well, the original word for demon, like Plato used in Greek word daimon, it just means intelligence, a genius, and we're all demons, and because we're all intelligent.
Daimon, yes.
Yeah, daimon. Yeah. So, yes. But they've conveniently convoluted the two, fallen angels and demons, because you can do that. They're interchangeable, but they're not the same thing.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Now, going back to you were talking about the occult anatomy that we have. They say that this is really the seat of Yahweh. It's right here, where you have also the Anya chakra, and where you have. How do you? I mean, in astrotheological terms, which is the planet that reflects us here and also here, because then we have the Jews or even the Pope putting something on top of. So what is your explanation for that?
Okay, so the 7 chakras, which correspond to the 7 colors of the rainbow, the top is Kronos, the crown chakra.
Okay.
That's Saturn, because he's the one who wears the crown. So that this 1,000-petaled lotus that you have here is the crown of Kronos. Then the Ajna is Jupiter. Then your throat chakra is Mars, blue. Then the sun, Tifereth, in the Kabbalistic system, that's green, that's the sun. Then Venus is the solar plexus. Then Mercury, the orange one, or we should say the orange one, the sacral plexus, that's Mercury, and then the red one is the moon, the menstruation, the blood, the color of blood, you see? But you can invert that. The moon here and Saturn at the bottom. It's also doable. It's one-way street, the Kundalini and the Kunda buffer. Sorry, two-way street.
So the Kundalini goes though through the spinal column. No, it's there that we find it, no? Or not?
Yeah. If we go with the Kunda buffer, we start with the moon here and Saturn at the bottom. If we go with the Kundalini, well, then the moon is at the bottom and then Saturn is at the top.
Because then you have the Ida, the Pingala, the Sushumna, that you are, the central to this whole thing, to the serpentine energy that we have, no? And it can go out of sync. I mean, I remember from my own personal experience within a ritual, which many years ago I was very much involved in the occult, and I was doing the magic of Abraham in the Major. Suddenly, I kind of must have screwed up my Kundalini, because my father said, "You got your Kundalini out of sync." And in fact, I couldn't even breathe. It was like, they had to rush to get me an injection to relax my muscles, and the whole thing was really pretty strong. It was a very strong experience. I mean, I'm sure you understand it, because, I mean, from what you are describing, you have very much a profound understanding of this. What is it that brings, let's say, out of sync the Kundalini?
Well, when you force it, you should never see these people who do Kundalini yoga and that. Well, I mean, that's fine if they want to do. I wouldn't do that. I would let it happen naturally, because it's going to happen. It's like, why would you force a little baby to grow? He's 4 years old and he's only 2.5 feet. Why would you want to stretch him? Why would you want to force him to grow? He'll grow.
Because I guess that the feeling is that your inner perception has to go towards an illumination, and you have to go through that. You sense that you have to go through that. But then, of course, you might also risk to overdo it. And
it can be dangerous. That's why a lot of people say, "Oh, this Kundalini stuff, it's evil, it's from the devil." Well, because it's a duality world. Jesus and the devil are two opposites of the same thing. So, like anything, a knife can be used for good or for bad, and that's the same with the Kundalini. I would never ever force it. I would let it happen naturally, and it does. It does happen naturally and slowly. It should be done.
No, but I totally agree. I was forcing it, and I mean, in the Jewish tradition, they call the Jews call it the sacred, the sacral plexus is like Sodom and Gomorrah in their depiction. So it's no, you're totally right with that. But I mean, did you ever have an experience which got out of control?
No. Never.
So you always managed to balance every single spiritual or otherwise experience you had in the metaphysical?
Yes, because in a sense, I'm afraid to overdo anything, overeat, overdrink, take too much DMT or LSD. I've had plenty of these entheogens, but I've never had a bad trip. And why is that? Well, because I'm a microdoser. I'll never, ever, ever overdose on anything, because I don't want to do that. I just want to experience things mildly and in their time. I give everything time. I'd be like, for instance, when I was doing LSD, I've never had more than 2 tabs, 1.5. That's it. And then my friends would say, "Oh no, you need 4 tabs if you really want to."
No.
Not interested.
Then after you risk to really get into the sacred cobra, and then at that point you are basically upsetting the brazen serpent, if we want to call it in terms of that are, you know, occult anatomy, Kundalini terms. I mean, you really risk a lot, like we said. So I completely agree that certain experiences should be avoided. Though it's also important to understand that sometimes after you've done those, if you survive those experiences and you're back in the now, I found it like maybe you have dared and you have seen something others haven't. So there is the pro and the cons. I will definitely suggest our audience to never replicate whatever wild things me or you were doing back in the days, because when I started that magic of Abramelin, and then, like you said, you have LSD, you have this, you have that, and you can really amplify certain things, but you can also lead to results which might be disastrous. And
well, I've had friends who had a bad trip, came back, and then never been the same.
No, never came back. That's the problem.
Right.
Yeah. So basically, then you have them wandering around. And, you know, my father was a psychiatrist. They often call him, because he was a guy who had worked also with MK Ultra at the Sorbonne in Paris and all that. So he knew all the tricks of the LSD intaking and how to counteracting. But it is really heavy for these people. I mean, they might throw themselves out of the window without even taking LSD anymore, because they have lost their connection with reality.
Yeah.
And I saw it in more than an occasion. I remember, you know, even in this village in Italy, Roviana, a small village where I lived for a period of time, there was a guy who used to be a dancer on TV, you know, one of these. And then I remember suddenly I see him after a number of years, all fat, and then I said, what happened to this guy? He's not even answering to me in the correct way. He was in his own. He took a bad trip, and that's it. And unfortunately, the results can be really, like I said, disastrous. So it's not good to attempt any. But even when it comes to invoking or evoking things, it's a big risk. I mean, you are in Mexico. In Mexico, there is a long tradition of such things done. You know, I mean, we of course had the over commercialization with Carlos Castaneda of these topics. But what do you think of those forms of shamanism which deal with those entities, the voladores of sorts?
Well, I mean, I've had some good mushrooms here in Mexico. So, but again, when I've been given a dose, I always quarter that. I always make it a quarter of the dose. If they say, this is the dose you need, I will never do that dose.
Okay. So the suggestion in that case is to always be moderate with everything. And I think that goes with everything in life. It can be food, it can be drugs, it can be alcohol, it can be anything. Moderation first, microdosing first, because there is no need to exaggerate with things.
No.
And unfortunately, it seems that we are heading towards a society which has lost that sense of responsibility towards themselves. And so we see them more and more exaggerating, overdosing, overdoing things in the wrong way, no?
Yeah, and they do permanent damage, and they don't realize. They continue their life after the trip and thinking that they're the same person. They're not. They've been altered. It does. This is why there's so much fear about mind-altering drugs. It's because of the dose. It's always about the dose. Your food can be a poison if it's the wrong dose. Any poison, if it's the wrong dose, can either fix you or kill you. It's all about the dosage. You have to pay attention to the dosage.
Thank you for your advice. Thank you for what you taught us today in this great chat of ours. I hope in the future we can replicate it. I hope that my audience at least understood what astrotheology is, thanks to Santos. Will you like to add something?
Well, no, I just really would like to encourage everybody to step away from their religions and keep their minds open. You know, there might be religious people here that are sure that Christianity is the path of salvation, or Judaism, or Islam and the Prophet Muhammad and what have you. These are all good. These are all good. But remember, they're all in you. Ultimately, it is you. In Italian, we say, Dio aiuta chi si aiuta. So, you know, if you don't...
Aiuta che Dio aiuti. Yes, absolutely. Yes. You need to help yourself. Otherwise, God is not going to help you. I mean, you can't just wait and hope that everything is going to be sorted out for you. That's for sure.
That's right. As much as you believe in all this stuff, if you don't have the works to match it, and vice versa...
It seems like we have lost Santos, who was frozen for a moment when you were like this, Santos. So very symbolic, like a grip of a lion. Thank you so much, Santos. It was a fantastic experience. I want to wish all of our viewers a happy Easter to spend with your friends and family. It's very important to have a family. It's very important to have friends in this day and age where everything is, this virtual world we live through the internet is distancing people rather than putting them together. So I hope that happens for you, and you have a great time there in Mexico. I hope one day I can come and visit. And thank you so much, really, because we have a lot to learn from each other, and I think that the system fears us, but that's great. I mean, that's like, I think the fact that the system has feared us, for you in Australia, for me in Italy, I think that unfortunately there is societies which still fear a free mind, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. It's unfortunate, because if they allow everyone to have a free mind, they will also be free. Because the elite, are they free? No, they're more slaves than we are. They have to go out in public with bodyguards. They have to have security. They have to have all this protection. So they've made a jail for themselves by imprisoning us. No one. It's a lose-lose. If they want to win, really, really win, they have to let us free. They just have to. Everyone needs to win, and we can. We're all God's children. We all need a fair chance and an equal chance, all of us.
Thank you, Santos. We speak soon. Take care, guys. Have a great Easter. Peace, and more peace, because we need peace today in a world which is full of conflicts, of division.
Illuminati want my mind, soul, and my body. Secret society, trying to keep it on.